So, hi everyone, welcome to our weekly Q&A session. And today is my pleasure to welcome our coach Daniel here. So, Daniel, I'm really glad to have you here today. And how are you? How are you?
All good, all good. Thanks for having me. And yeah, as you know, I was actually just sitting down on my couch. I was getting ready to do some work, and then I get a message from you like, "Here's the link." I was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to live today." So I was just scrambling to get everything done, but I managed just in time. So anyway, I'm glad I made it.
Right, perfect. It's exactly on time. So, yeah, it's always great to have you here. And I'm sure everybody is waiting for your insights. So, let's deep dive into them. I have found one question which was already on the YouTube. So, let me share this one. It is a really, really nice one. And it is from our faithful follower, Ian. And here it goes. Hi, Veronika and Daniel. I have worked in children's mental health for over 30 years and feel privileged that I can help young people with their struggles. I have had insomnia for around 15 months, and I'm sure, like many others that have accessed the sleep school, I feel very grateful for the advice and support you all provide. Are you able to give a sense of what is it like to help those that struggle with insomnia, and whether you have thoughts on how to reach more people who find themselves in this struggle? Massive thank you, Ian from Northeast England. So, really nice one, right?
Yeah, but super nice, super nice. And Ian, thanks so much for the support. I see your likes and thumbs up and things of that nature on Instagram and on Facebook. So yeah, thanks so much for the support, Ian. And yeah, I can start on my end. I will say that helping people who struggle with sleep is very gratifying, and part of the reason is what Ian talks about here, which is that we're not reaching a huge amount of people, and so there aren't a huge amount of people who are actually getting access to meaningful, helpful education and information. So when people do, a lot of people go like, "Oh my gosh, I have never found anything that actually speaks to me, that resonates with me. This is so helpful." And you can see a lot of transformation, which is wonderful. Uh, but it's also, you're also meeting people when many are in a very, very difficult place, and some people are like immediately like eye open, like, "Oh my gosh, this is the way I understand it." Other people are like, I understand, I kind of get it, but I'm not sure this is for me. Like, I think my case is different in this type of situation. So I would say for anybody who's kind of like considering this type of work, I think you really want to see that you have to absorb a lot of difficult emotions. Like, you have to be willing to empathetically listen to people who are very, very anxious, very, very sad, feel very, very, hopeless, very guilty. And when you do that, like when you talk to another human being who's feeling that way, you also feel that way. It's just a human thing, right? We were all built that way. So you have to absorb a lot of like difficult emotions, but on the other hand, when that shifts and changes, like that's so wonderful. The relief and the release is so rewarding, right? So that's kind of a little bit about the work, I'd say. And on the topic of like how to reach more people, I don't know, Ian, if you have any tips, anybody else has any tips, like I'm super grateful for that. I've pondered this a lot. I'm often thinking like, well, we really have all the education here. We've kind of figured out, we've pretty much solved insomnia, as in kind of we understand it very, 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 very on a very granular level. So why isn't it spreading like wildfire, right? I don't know, but I think to me, it's like it's still so new, still so different, that it takes a person who is like quite brave, to embrace what we're teaching in a world where 99% of what you hear is very different. So I don't know. To me, it's just a matter of time. At some point, you'll reach kind of a critical mass, and things will really grow quickly. But up until then, I don't know. I'm just grateful for everybody who's out there on Reddit and Facebook and inviting more people to our little ecosystem. But yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Daniel. And I remember once you said like education is the most difficult thing to sell, because it's not like a product that you just buy, use it, and you see whether it works or not. The education requires our full presence our full devotion to the given topic, and it requires consistency and time. And this is what is the most difficult about it. So maybe that is the reason why is it not spreading like a wildfire, like. And also in I was thinking in nowadays society where everything is instant, everything is so quick, people require instant solutions, quick fixes. And with education, with changing our beliefs and thoughts that have been and habits that have been building for years and years and years, it simply takes time. So absolutely. You're right, Daniel. Thank you so much for sharing this one. And I just want to acknowledge Ian for working 30 years in children's mental health. This, I believe, you have changed lives of many, many young people. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah, well done.
And cool. Okay, many questions are coming in. And the first one that we have received is from Liha. Hi, there was a period of time during my journey where I was feeling tired during the day and I was okay with just resting. I feel like I no longer feel tired enough to rest during the day, despite having tiring days and not sleeping well. Could it be hyperarousal? I have a fear of not feeling tired ever again. So, what are your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah. First, Lilia, sorry to hear about the struggle that's been that's been happening in your life, but I'm glad you're here, glad you found us, and I would say that just the question is very nice because it's a very insightful question. Leah says, "Could this be hyperarousal?" And of course, no medical advice to anyone out there, but this sounds very much like hyperarousal. Absolutely. In fact, this is very common. We have a video out there called the Energizer Bunny phenomenon. So if anybody searches even on YouTube or on Google, like the Energizer Bunny phenomenon, you'll find it. And this is when you are surprised to find that even though you sleep little, you're not tired the next day. In fact, you have kind of this energy. And then if you think of that as unusual or strange, you may be thinking like, oh, what's happening? I'm not sleeping, but I'll have all this energy. Something must be wrong. Then you become more kind of anxious. You sleep a little again, and then you have even more energy because this is like all this is strange and weird to you and threatening to you. So yeah, this is very, very common. And I think this is sort of the key too, because when we see this and we go like, oh yeah, it is just hyperarousal. It is just my worry about not being tired that is keeping me feeling like I'm not tired. Then we're on a path of leaving this. And when we no longer think anything strange is happening, like the hyperarousal comes down, we start feeling tired again, and then things get easier. So yes, I would say, Leah, you're onto something very, very true there.
Absolutely, and I can only support these insights because for a very, very long time I haven't felt tired, and it was really scary for me. Like, oh my goodness, have I never ever in my life feel tired again? Because when your body is heavy, your eyes are heavy, and it's really, really nice feeling, right? As opposed to this energizer bunny, right? Constantly being like alert and energized and feeling like you want to hit the road and running. And it takes time. I have to say that even after I was sleeping well for quite some time, it still took time until I really reached the place that in the evening I felt tired. And for some time, it felt like I am not falling into sleep, I'm rather crashing into sleep. So there was not this stage in between. I was either alert or asleep. Not this like really feeling like really nice and tired and sleepy. But don't worry, Liha, with time and consistency that you will devote to this inner work, I believe this will come again to you. Cool. So another question is from Jedi Master. Less pressure around sleep will result in our brains perceiving the fear less over time.
Yeah, thanks, Jedi, for asking. And to me, the short answer here is yes. And just to expand a little bit on that, I would say that pressure and fear here is essentially the same thing. We feel pressured to sleep because we're worried about not sleeping. So they're from the same place. So yes, less pressure leads to less fear, but it's almost like it's the same thing. It's almost more that it's like, education leads to seeing there's no threat, and then like fear goes away, pressure also goes away. So something like that.
Absolutely. Another question is from Ace. Hi. You often say the problem is the fear of not being able to sleep, but I have had insomnia my whole life. So what could be the root problem?
Yeah, another nice question. And this comes up quite often too. Somebody who shares that this is not a recent thing. This has been going on ever since I can remember, since I was a child. And sometimes the root can be that there is a fear that has been with us for a very long time that actually stems from childhood. And this is when somebody has been told for as long as they can remember by their parents that you were a very bad sleeper. Like, it took you a long time to fall asleep. You never slept well, and for that person, this idea that there's something wrong with their sleep is ingrained from very early on. And so there can be some sort of fear around sleep from very, very early on. That can be the case. Another thing that can explain this is that we've had some disruption around sleep for a very long time, and we didn't and what we now have, for example, is insomnia, but we think of everything as one thing. We think of just like not sleeping well is the same thing. It's all insomnia. But when we kind of dig deeper, we find that for a long period of time, we were kind of stressed about things. We were not worried about sleep, but we were stressed about something, or something was going on in life that kept our sleep choppy. And maybe now we have insomnia, as in like the fear of sleep, but we kind of bulk it all in together once. So I would just say, to fully answer this question, it would be helpful to know more things. But I will say that the experience of having some type of struggle with sleep for as long as you can remember, not unusual or strange whatsoever.
Absolutely. And maybe what I would add is that the insomnia, for basically all the time I have experienced it, was very mysterious. I didn't know what is going on. And all the time I was trying to fix my sleep. How can I make myself fall asleep in the given night? And this was basically perpetuating the struggle. So when I heard from you for the very first time that insomnia is fear of not being awake at night, it basically clicked. It was like, oh my goodness, of course, because all I think about is sleep all the time. And I was really trying hard to avoid this nighttime wakefulness. So of course it was always like a phobia of being of avoiding like being awake at night. So because I could, in the first moment, it was like when I heard the word fear, I didn't understand it quite because uh, I'm not afraid to sleep. I want to sleep. So how come this could be fear, right? But only when I started to understand that it is behind this fear is hyperarousal, and this hyperarousal is the mechanism that our brain is setting off the moment we want to go to bed automatically based on our previous reactions. This is when I realized, aha, it does make sense, right? So just know is that behind this fear is hyperarousal, and to understand this, maybe would be more helpful too, because sometimes renaming or rephrasing one word can help you give a different perspective. So, for example, some people don't like the words befriending wakefulness, and they prefer using tolerating wakefulness. So, maybe if you have the problem with the word fear, you can reframe it to hyperarousal is keeping you from sleeping. And when you have this understanding that what is hyperarousal, how to befriend wakefulness or tolerate wakefulness, and all this education around this, you might see that the struggle eases and the sleep comes easier over time. So I hope this was helpful. And right, we have another question from K. Jane. another faithful follower of this channel. So, hi, it's good to see you, lovely people. Thank you, Jane. For about 6 months, I suffered with bad, constant, paradoxical insomnia. I believe I'm healing because I'm getting a little more deeper, I guess, sleep.
Yeah.
I I still have nights when I have paradoxical insomnia, and I'm still not getting that sleepy feeling. Is this the healing process? So maybe I just answer this quickly because we've talked about this before. Yes, it really takes time to not to again feel sleepy. The hyperarousal is constant still for a very long time, even after we sleep really well. And so basically after our recovery, and simply takes some time to again to gain this sense of sleepiness in the evening. Right. Another question came from Mihaela Dragoman. Hello, guys. I had insomnia for 6 years, but I get some sleep overnight. But now, but now I'm pregnant and a bit scared when the baby will appear. It will get worse. How can I get uh, can be calm about this? Thank you, guys. So maybe this might be a question for me. So if you don't mind, I'll answer this one. And of course, I have many of these worries, and because I experienced insomnia before getting pregnant, during pregnancy, and after I delivered the baby, and it was a challenge. But I didn't understand that the difference, what is sleep disruption and what is insomnia. Sleep disruption is something that disrupts our sleep, and there could be many things. Like it could be stress, it could be noisy neighbor, it could be hormonal. It could be our baby that is waking us up for feeding in the nighttime. And on the other hand, there is the insomnia, the way we see it here. And on and the difference is it's a sleep disruption with a layer of fear on the top of it. So we cannot control the sleep disruptions, but what we can work on, I'm not saying controlling, what we can work on is the fear of not sleeping, the fear of being disrupted during the night. And of course, our nights can be choppy, but we don't have to fear it, because when we are afraid of these nights, then it becomes this self-perpetuating ongoing struggle with insomnia, with fear, with anxiety, and so on. And all these emotions and fears, they basically feed into each other, resulting in not sleeping. So when you work on this fear and allow these disruptions to happen without judging it, without thinking this is not supposed to be there, this is wrong, this is not good, then it will be for you easier and easier. Because uh, if you would take your favorite example, Daniel, if you would take a random person from a street and just keep this person awake for all night long, and the next day you would ask this person, like, how do you feel? They would say, like, tired. But this person wouldn't say, this is the end of the world. Oh my goodness. Like, it's my everything is ruined. How will I survive this day? How will I function in my life? And so on and so on. So this is very similar. When you when we have insomnia and we have this really built-in fear in us that there is something inherently wrong going on about our sleep, then we have these beliefs that our days will be ruined if we don't sleep enough. But also, you can remember those days, Mihaela, when you, for example, partied all night long, traveled all night long, or studied all night long. The next day, you felt tired, but it didn't mean the end of the world. So maybe I would like to invite you to stay on this channel, Mihaela, and just deep dive into the teachings. And I believe it would be easier for you to get an understanding, because all you need to overcome insomnia is to have the understanding, the education. So it's a long way.
I want to add something. It's because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and how the same experience or situation can lead into two completely different directions. And I started thinking about this in the context actually of our many students who are moms or who are pregnant
Mhm.
or worried about that. And what I want to say here is that I have heard equally many times somebody who said, it was during my pregnancy that I really started having trouble sleeping because I was thinking of like, if I don't sleep, how my baby's going to do? Am I doing like, if I don't sleep enough, is my baby not going to be okay? And there's pressure to sleep, right? And they have struggled to sleep during pregnancy. But equally many times I heard somebody say like, you know what, when I was pregnant and when I had my baby, I actually slept fine because then I had an excuse for not sleeping. I was like, of course I'm not going to sleep because I'm pregnant. Of course I'm not going to sleep because the baby's waking me up all the time. So it became easier for me, right?
Mhm.
And so we see it's not about the situation, it's how we think about it. Same thing with medical issues. Some people say like, oh, I had a cold and I slept so well because I was like, oh, I have a cold now. Of course I'm not going to sleep well. Pressure goes down, you sleep well. Another person is like, I had a cold and I had a really trouble sleeping because they were like, oh, this is extra thing, right? So
Mhm.
again, it's not about the thing itself. It's how we relate to it, how we think about it that really matters.
Yes, this absolutely reminds me one of your teachings, attribute to the obvious. This was really, really helpful when I was struggling with insomnia and I was fearing this one night I wouldn't sleep. And it would always come, this one night, which would very often lead into consecutive nights of not sleeping. But when I could attribute to the obvious, like I'm not sleeping because of this or that, then I didn't fear so much the other nights that I wouldn't sleep. And this was really, really helpful. So, right, another question that we have is from Alexander Massard. Hello, I had a few bad nights during the summer, which sparked a period of insomnia, which has been going on and off for a while now. I have been watching your videos and they've helped me a lot. The problem I have now is that even though I sleep quite well every night, I worry about how the next night will be. Any tips on how to get over this roadblock? Yeah, actually, we have started to talk about this. The word is yours, Daniel.
Yeah, sure. I think the short answer to this one
Mhm.
is the what can sound so unhelpful and kind of like paradoxical, which is simply kind of an okayness with the fact that you're worrying about the next night. Remember, the brain is a survival machine, always wants to keep us safe. And when something has landed on that safety radar, it's going to be like, what about this? What if this? What if that? So even if you're sleeping well, there's no struggle with sleep. Your brain may still go like, okay, you slept well tonight, but how about tomorrow night? Oh, you slept well again, but how about the third night? How about this night? How about this? And those thoughts will come. And thoughts are ways that the brain like communicates with us. And my favorite example here is like using interpersonal communication to illustrate intrapersonal communication, meaning how we communicate with other people is a great example of like the internal communication within us. So if I have something really important I want to tell Veronika, and Veronica's kind of like, Daniel, it's not important, then I'm like, Veronika, you got to hear this. I'm telling you, this is important. Like I amplify my message to Veronika. The more Veronika tries to like not hear it. So the more you're like, oh no, I'm worrying about the next night. I'm worrying about this. I have to stop worrying about this. Then that's going to be amplified. The brain's going to be like, oh, you don't want to worry about this? Oh, you got to worry about this. But the more we're like, okay, I'm worried about the next night, and that's totally normal. It's okay to worry. Let myself worry. Then it's like the message is received, communication is completed, no need to repeat it over and over again. So basically, okayness with that is what's going to lead to less of that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Right. Another questions that we have is from PK. Hi, why does education not lead to a feeling of safety for me? Hyperarousal persists despite knowing how the insomnia works and that it won't really harm me. So, really nice one. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, very nice question. And of course, firstly, I'm sorry you haven't felt this release yet that can come from education, but I'm glad you have education, because that's, to me, really the foundation. When we're not educated, we don't understand what's going on, then we can so easily be in this like really difficult place that I call like the Oz, when everything's bewildering and confusing and strange. With education, we have some foundation. Now, why hasn't it led to where you want to be? Several things came to my mind, but one of them is when education becomes another attempt at controlling sleep, or another attempt at having less hyperarousal, or another attempt at controlling our anxiety. Essentially, education can also become this effort just like the example we used before, when the more we try to resist an anxious thought, the stronger it becomes. The same plays out in general when it comes to anxiety, in general when it comes to hyperarousal. So if we're like, oh, I'm educated, I shouldn't be hyperaroused. Why isn't educating lowering my hyperarousal? That's tricky, because then it becomes an attempt to block something. That's kind of one explanation. The second explanation is more to do with how we learn. And we can say that there are two principal ways that we learn. One is kind of cognitive intellectual, and one is experiential. And sometimes, even though we intellectually understand that I am safe, there's nothing here that can harm me, we haven't really experientially learned that yet. And experientially learning is kind of going through something with awareness and seeing like, oh, what I was so afraid of happened, and I'm still okay. And going through that a couple of times can lead to this deeper learning on a kind of more fundamental level. So I would say it could be that too, that it just takes a little bit more time, that you have dedication and you go through things that you have been afraid of. You're willing to face things that you've been afraid of, and you see that nothing happens. That to this kind of emotional or deeper kind of subconscious learning that leads to release. Those are the two things that came up for me immediately, Veronika. But yeah, back to you.
Absolutely. And I would just add to your second explanation, or the second thing, just one example, one practical example from the community that I have experienced. And I coached one lady, and she said like she was constantly struggling with sleep. Like she was saying she had like zero sleeps most of the nights. And eventually we came to a discussion about how sleep is not a cure for insomnia, because basically we could be sleeping like every night very well, but we still have this fear. Okay, how about the next night? But still I'm afraid, what if I don't sleep tonight, and how will I function, how long this is going to take, when I will be free from these thoughts, and so on and so on. And basically when we said like, oh, you must be kidding me, sleep is solution to everything, right? And in another session she said like, oh, I didn't sleep that one night, but the next day I felt absolutely okay. And this is when I realized, aha, I knew what are you talking about, that sleep is not a cure for insomnia. So maybe I just wanted to just highlight like what you're saying, that uh, getting over insomnia is experiential learning. And I could be telling everything, anything, and just discussing and discussing, but unless you experience it personally, because an experience in itself is not transferable. I can't give you my experiences, right? So everybody needs to experience it yourself, that after a sleepless night, you still can have a good day. And this is leading to overcome insomnia, right? This is leading to lowering the fear that we have from not sleeping. So just wanted to add these 2 cents to what you were saying, Daniel. And we have really, really a lot of questions. I don't know how much time you have, Daniel, but maybe 2 more we can answer, if that's okay for you.
Sounds good. Sounds great.
And I just found one really nice comment. Hi, Veronika. You coached me around this time last year. Just wanted to say thank you so much for all you do. Oh, thank you so much. If I remember, it was Alex. Okay, so hi, Alex. Thank you so much for a shout out. And so let's choose a question from Barati A. Any advice for somniphobia? Every time I go to bed, I get anxious about falling asleep and letting go of control. I am doing better these days, but I still have some residual fear that comes now and then. These days, I've been sleeping quite well, around 6 or 7 hours a night, but the fear and anxiety have not gone away entirely. I'm afraid my somniphobia would come back. Somniphobia seems worse than insomnia. I think it's something we have discussed. We started to discuss a moment ago. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah. Again, another very insightful and nice question. And firstly, I want to say, so glad overall things are easier for you. That's wonderful. But yes, if we start kind of in the end here, we can start with like somniphobia seems worse than insomnia. Somehow, whatever we're struggling with at the moment often seems like the hardest and the worst. Somebody who says, I'm sure other people here are saying like, oh no, pain is the worst. Pain is worse than insomnia, or like, no, OCD is worse than insomnia, or and I'm not trying to diminish or downplay anything you're experiencing, Veronika, but just know that oftentimes what we are experiencing in this moment for the brain is like, no, this is the worst, right? So, and just hearing that can be helpful, because then we realize, look, our brain is always trying to play up whatever it thinks is the immediate threat, and when we kind of see through that, we're like, okay, no, this is actually probably just the same. Like it's all the same. It's all kind of fear. But going back like one step from that, it was like, I'm now afraid of somniphobia. And that's also so helpful to kind of dissect this and take a look at this. So what is somniphobia? Well, it is when we are afraid of the process of falling asleep or sleeping in itself, right? So when we're afraid of that, what are we really saying here? Well, it's essentially we're saying like, I'm afraid of being afraid. And you can say the same about insomnia. Somebody says like, I'm afraid I'm going to have insomnia again. Well, what is insomnia? Insomnia is when we're afraid of not sleeping. So again, when we say I'm afraid of having insomnia, it's like we're essentially saying I'm afraid of being afraid. Same thing when somebody says I'm scared I'm going to have a panic attack. Panic attack is like an intense period of fear. So that person's also saying I'm afraid of being afraid. So, and why am I highlighting this? Well, when we truly see this, that when we're afraid of is being afraid, it can almost seem like silly. It's like, so there's nothing there. There's nothing tangible. There's nothing to be afraid of. We're just afraid of feeling afraid, which is natural because it doesn't feel nice to be afraid. But depacking this and highlighting this can be so helpful, because we can see that there's actually nothing of substance there. And a few more things on this topic. So somniphobia is not uncommon, not super common either, maybe, but it's not uncommon at all, just to normalize it. And we can so easily see how this happens, because when we're in a state of like hyperarousal, our brain is kind of afraid, looking for threats. Well, guess what? Being asleep can so easily look like a threat, because we are unconscious, like, or less conscious. We are kind of vulnerable, right? So of course we can be afraid of that. The process of falling asleep is kind of mysterious, right? So of course we can be afraid of that. But there's nothing special about this fear. It's just like any other fear of something that is completely harmless. Sleeping is harmless, being awake is harmless, falling asleep is harmless, waking up is harmless. It's all harmless. So we can, the same way we approach like the fear around not sleeping, we can also deploy to the fear around sleeping or insomniphobia, which is education, just kind of understanding why we're afraid, understanding there's nothing to be afraid of, and deploying courage, kind of the willingness to experience what we have been afraid of, the kindness, which is like when we're not having the courage, like that's okay. We just need to be warm with ourselves. And to finalize this, I want to say that although what we mainly talk about here, insomnia, it's like the solution is generic. It applies to all these inner struggles we have. And when you see this, I think that can be very, very helpful. So I'll pause there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing, Daniel. And so let's see at the last question. And I found this one really nice. It's from Andre B7. Hi guys, I don't have insomnia anymore, but wonder what advice you would give to employers of staff who have insomnia and perhaps take time off work because of it. I remember in the early stages of mine, they asked me to call them every other day to say how I was sleeping and what I was doing about it. Medication, doctor appointments, and so on, which of course was causing me to focus intensely on sleep and wasn't helpful. Thank you. Interesting question. Maybe I can start here. And when I was struggling with insomnia, I also took some time off from work because I obviously wasn't coping. I was at the time, even the breaking point moment was for me when I was driving to work and I couldn't stay straight on the road. And this was really scary. Like, no, I can't go to work because I can't drive, simply because I was too exhausted. I was really sleepy, not enough, and I just needed to take some time off. And it's at that time it really helped me. Of course, when we take time off, it can lead to like, let's say, two ways. One way is that we stay at home and we completely focus on our not sleeping, we beat ourselves, we are miserable, and just feed our misery in a way. But on the other hand, also it can give us this, it can lift the foot of the pressure that I have to sleep, I have to perform, I have to, and can give us to be a little bit more relaxed about not sleeping, which in result it can give us it can ease things about around sleep. But also, on the other hand, when someone would decide to keep working, it can help them to keep some kind of a structure in their day. It can show them that they can perform even when their day, even when their nights were poor or they didn't sleep that much. But if I understand your question right, like what advice to give to people who are employers of staff, it's there is not much known about insomnia out there, and many people see it as a problem, and you need to solve this problem. So they give you these unhelpful suggestions. So I believe you might have an option yourself whether to tell your employer what are you going through, because it's a personal thing, right? And if you do want to tell your boss about this, I remember I did tell my boss, and she didn't understand really what in deeply what was going on. Like, but I didn't. I wasn't bombarded with phone calls and like how am I doing and so on. But of course, this gives focus on our sleep. Like when everybody, it's really similar. Like when people who are close to us are constantly asking, like, "How did you sleep? How did you sleep? Are you better now? Are you okay now? What are you? How are you doing?" What depends is our reaction. When we already know, if you follow this YouTube channel, Andre, you already know what is insomnia about. What you can say is, "I'm working on it," and if you don't start develop like kind of like really deep conversation about like about the emotional struggle that are you having with your sleep, people tend to stop asking over time, right? "I'm working on it, I'm fine." So this is the same like what you can tell to your employer, like, "I'm working on it," and you don't have to say anything more. And so it's hard to like educate people on something that have absolutely no idea what is going on, right? So these are my 2 cents. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, not much more to add. I would say, like, it's sort of like an ideal world, the employer would be like, "Oh, you've had some sleep struggles. Very normal, nothing strange or unusual at all. We have some resources for you. Like, we're going to send you to this person or give you this to read. And if you want to take some time off, that's totally fine." Like creating this kind of low pressure environment. Like if you want to take some time off, totally fine. And you can come back whenever you want to, no pressure. But if you want to come back tomorrow, great. If you want to take a week off or so, also great. Like something like that, providing education and then like low pressure, that would be kind of the best combination. But we'll see when we arrive there. Hopefully one time or sometime in the future. Oh, and also lastly, like Andre B27, I forget if it's and Andre or what the regular name. It's Andre, I think. But Andre anyway has been a great supporter also, and has been a guest on the channel, and came up with this concept of mapasti, make a plan and stick to it. So shout out to Andre for this.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much. We have come to the end of our Q&A session today. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming here, posting wonderful questions. There will be another session next week with one of our coaches. And Daniel, thank you very much for coming in. And I'm really looking forward to have you here next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.